Whew. Okay, just one more level. Hi everyone! Today, I'm going to be reviewing Swords and Serpents!
Another reviewer.
Yes, another reviewer. Now, with the introduction of the Humble Indie Bundle in 2010, more independently developed video games have been finding themselves on PCs than ever before. The reason for this is the choose-your-own-price format that the bundle runs on. $5 to $10 can get you a large number of games that would generally cost a lot more, with titles being added all the time. Now, why would any indie developer go for this? Well, it's simple. Get your name out, as well as charity. The Humble Indie Bundle also supports charities such as the Electronic Frontier Foundation, Child's Play, the American Red Cross, and Charity Water. And also, there is a tip for the organizers, as well as funds towards the indie developers, of course. Now, it's also inspired several other bundles, such as Indie Royale, Indie Gala, and Groupies, which actually adds in independent music with their bundles as well. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because the game I'm reviewing today is actually from a bundle I bought. I was actually going to buy the game outright, but then I saw it on one of the bundles, and I figured, why not support the cause? I'll get the game, I'll get a few more games, and I'll feel pretty good about myself because I like charities. So anyway, without any further ado, we're going to dive into Legend of Grimrock, an action RP. Oh, god damn it! Legend of Grimrock, an action RPG dungeon crawler developed and published by a 4-man Finnish indie developer called Almost Human. It was released in April of 2012 and was the developer's first offering into the gaming world. The plot is very simple. You play as 4 prisoners that are taken to the entrance atop Mount Grimrock on an airship. You are then absolved of your crimes and thrown in, while still being chained together. These story elements seem strikingly familiar.
My mind is set. Corwin shall take thee to the abyss. Return here with my daughter, and thy innocence shall be proven. If thou dost not return, Avatar, then thy lies shall have brought thee low.
Come on! There's inspired by, and then there's just plain stealing. Okay, so I might be a little harsh with that assessment, being that the intro really serves to set up the game mechanics before we begin. Traveling there by airship indicates the only way out is to go down through the mountain. There's no way back out on foot from where you came. Having the 4 prisoners chained together serves to explain why throughout you move as one entity, and there's no individual movement between characters, and the idea that your crimes are absolved, whatever they are, serves as motivation to make it through the mountain. It's not even arbitrary that you have no equipment. In Ultima Underworld, you were sent to the Stygian Abyss to save the Baron's daughter with nothing when you'd think he'd want you to succeed by equipping you. Here you're just 4 random assholes that supposedly committed crimes against the king, and aren't even expected to come back as no one has yet to. You can jump right into the game by using a default party. Now, I've been told that the default party can beat the game, but I played the game with them and had a little bit of difficulty. So I decided to try my hand with the customized characters. And holy crap, do they let you customize your characters. You can choose between 4 races: Human, Minotaur, Lizard Man, and Insectoid. They all have their strengths and weaknesses, like humans are balanced with their stats and get the most skill points to start with, but they have no natural resistances. Minotaurs are incredibly strong and have great natural resistances, but lack in dexterity, which affects their attack accuracy, and they only get 1 skill point to start with. Lizard men have a slightly higher dexterity, which gives them better attack accuracy and evasion, but they start with 1 less skill point than humans, and insectoids have low strength and vitality, but their willpower is high, and they can choose to have natural armor. And of course, being a dungeon crawler, you get to choose what class your characters are as well. This game has the usual choices: fighter, mage, or rogue. While vitality should be a factor for all classes so they aren't always dying, the fighter should max out strength to allow for hard hits. The mage should max out willpower to have high energy, allowing them to cast more spells without having to rest. I'll explain energy more later. And the rogue should max out dexterity to increase the attack accuracy of thrown and missile weapons that they will very likely be using from the back row. When I was making up my team, I decided to fit the races to which classes would benefit them most. A human fighter, a minotaur fighter, a lizardman rogue, and an insectoid mage. But we're not done yet. There's still more to do. You can choose from 6 class-specific skills to spend your skill points in. These skills do a lot, from raising your health or energy, your core attributes, or teaching you new abilities. You have the amount of skill points allocated for each race that are different, but regardless of your race, when you level up, you get 4. Now on to the next step, traits. Traits are the final aspect of setting up your skills and stats, once you have your race, class, core attributes, and skills figured out. They, like your skills, increase your core attributes, health or energy, attack power, accuracy, evasion. You get to choose 2, but be sure to pick traits that fit the class you're playing. Humans and lizardmen have 13 traits to choose from, while minotaurs and insectoids have race-specific traits that give them 14 in their sets. If you have a minotaur in your party and you don't give him the headhunter trait, you're missing out on a very easy way to gain some extra attack power. And of course, the last thing with character creation that I like to do is choosing the name. Now, I've never been very good with that, but this gives you a random generator, so I just keep clicking the button until I find names that I like. Umward? Vadok? Yeah, he looks like a Sankin. Belson? That's almost Balzan, so we'll go with it. The interface is fairly straightforward. Your 4 characters have portraits on the bottom right side of the screen, with the red bar representing their health, which is self-explanatory, a blue bar representing their energy, which depletes as they attack or use their abilities, and once it's empty, prevents them from performing any actions, and their hands that show what they're holding. You can equip them with weapons, shields, torches, or accessories to prepare them for what is to come. I kind of take issue with this system, as they couldn't just make the whole area where your items are equipped the buttons, just the images of your items. So sometimes when you're trying to be fast with your attacks to avoid death, you miss your weapon by a pixel and end up having to click again, which wastes precious seconds that the monsters use to kill you. Also, be sure to equip things as you find them. This game likes to throw a lot of pretty rough challenges your way out of nowhere. You really don't want to be digging around your inventory for weapons or armor that you found a few rooms before while you're being attacked. Gameplay is very simple. Movement is set on a grid upon which you can move 1 square at a time. Your movement is hindered when one of your characters is near their weight capacity in their inventory. You're stopped completely if any of them are over their capacity. The game offers a tutorial to familiarize you with the control scheme. You get an idea of how simple they wanted to make this game to help along immersion. You use the WASD keys to move, where W is forward, S is backward, D is strafe right, and A is strafe left. You can also change direction with the Q and E keys, where Q turns left and E turns right. These controls make movement feel really weird and take a long time to get used to. I've played this game to completion as of writing this review, and I'm still not used to it. You can even make it so the movement keys are controlled by buttons on the screen with the mouse, but I could never imagine doing this. Next, let me talk about battle. It's actually handled in a very streamlined way. You right-click your equipped weapon underneath your portrait, and it causes you to perform an attack. What attack you perform is dependent on how many skill points you put into that weapon type. The more skill points you apply to a weapon skill, the better the attack has a chance of being. The 2 characters on top of the character table are up front and can perform melee attacks, but take the most damage, which is best for fighters. The characters in the back row take the least amount of damage and cannot perform melee attacks, so your ranged characters and mages are best in the back row. A rogue can work in either position, as they have assassination skills they can use from the front row, or ranged abilities that they can use from the back row. Each of your characters have individual cooldown times that prevent you from attacking again until they're ready. This is kind of frustrating as you'll miss a lot, and you have to wait to make another attempt at hitting your foe. If you're fighting multiple monsters at one time, it's very important to stay mobile and not get surrounded. It's incredibly easy for 2 monsters to get you in a corner and kill you. Though if you're only fighting one monster or one group of monsters that are chained together, it's very easy to hit them, sidestep, anticipate where they're going to go, hit them, and sidestep away again. Another reason to not want to get cornered is that when you're fighting a monster head-on, your front line that should be well armored is taking all the damage, But if you get enemies beside or behind you, your backline of characters get attacked, and they usually won't have very high health or defense, and that can lead to trouble. But if you really want to be a cheeky bastard, you can run behind a door, unleash a volley of attacks, close the door, wait for all your abilities to cool down, open the door, then just wail on the poor monster and shut the door again. I used this strategy a lot as it bottlenecked my foes, and it was especially effective when I would battle poisonous enemies. Poison in this game is fucking insane. When your characters get inflicted with it, their health just drains, and if you don't pay attention, they can die immediately. At first I thought it was a thing that just didn't go away, and you absolutely needed to use a potion to get rid of it, as it usually lasts so long. But as it turns out, if you rest, the poison will eventually go away. This was another reason I battled monsters from behind door frames. If they beat me up too badly, I could just close the door and rest away my wounds. This strategy does have a couple of downsides, though. For a few of the spells, if you cast them without a target, you suffer their effects. This can happen when you're opening a door you just closed to recover from your last volley of attacks. If you don't wait until just the right moment, your melee and ranged attacks will hit the door and your magic spells will hit yourself. This method does have one other downside too. The statues of the weird Lovecraftian creatures you see throughout the mountain are actually monsters you have to fight in the lower levels of the game. They're called Goromorgs, and they use powerful magic attacks, have a shield you have to break before you can hurt them, and worst of all, they can open doors. Magic is handled in this game by right-clicking your mage's hand, staff, or orb. Giving him melee weapons and a shield will hinder his ability to use magic, so you'll want to keep him in the back row. Use magic sparingly, as his energy seems to run out fairly quickly, though make sure you cast at least one spell on each monster you fight so that your mage gets experience too. This is also one of those games that allows you to experiment with your magic. Casting spells is handled by 9 runes set in a square that appears in your mage's portrait when you right-click his hand, staff, or orb. You can select any combination of runes to attempt to cast a spell. You'll either cast a spell, your spell will fizzle, meaning that the combination you put in wasn't a spell at all, or you just won't have the skill to cast a spell, saying that the spell does exist, you just don't have enough skill in the right element to cast it. You'll still lose energy for attempting to cast a spell, even if it doesn't work. Spells have many elements associated with them: fire, earth, ice, air, and spellcraft. If you look in your skill list for these, you'll notice that at certain levels there are triple question marks. They fill in when you cast the spell for the first time. There are scrolls throughout the game that tell you what runes to activate and what skill level you have to reach for which element to cast it. For things that magic doesn't do, such as heal your characters or cure them of poison or disease, there's alchemy. Once you find the mortar and pestle, you can start filling empty flasks with potions. It comes with instructions on how to make health and anti-venom potions. When you make a potion and use it, the flask empties out and stays in your inventory, so you can make more potions. I thought the ingredients would be valuable, as the effects they have are the type of thing you wouldn't expect to always have thrown at you in a game this difficult. But as my box of herbs gets heavier and heavier, I feel I might be wrong. In the last few levels I found myself needing health potions, but that was really all. That left several potions I just simply didn't make. It was more of a burden than anything, when they constantly throw ingredients at you. Food was treated the same way. I was always carrying too much food and had to leave so much behind. And I even grinded extra levels at one point in the game because I didn't train the right magic skills before reaching a certain level, and I still didn't run short on food. There's not really much more to get into with the story of this game. It's basically handled by the intro. You get more bits of the plot via visions you have while you rest, from someone trapped in the lower levels of the mountain. They claim to know how to get out, but they can't do it alone, so without any other option, you follow the visions. I always imagine this guy has the voice of Deep Throat from the X-Files. Another plot element to keep things moving and keep you interested are Turam's notes. Turam was a former occupant of the mountain, and has left notes scattered about it that contain hints to hidden treasures, insight into his own experiences with the mountain, and some of his notes are laying next to gear he's left behind. If you manage to find all of Turam's notes, and the remains of Turam, there's a way to play through the game as him alone. I haven't tried this mode yet, but from the looks of his stats and abilities, he's pretty tough. The biggest gameplay mechanic to this game are solving puzzles. There are several puzzles in each level of varying difficulty. The puzzles necessary to make your way into the lower levels of the mountain aren't that hard, but some of the puzzles you need to find the secrets, and believe me, you'll want to find the secrets, are really fucking hard. As I said earlier, I still have trouble with the controls, and I've been playing a lot of this game, so that makes some of the puzzles really hard to pull off. I mean, they're possible. Adversary! As I've been able to do them, they're just really hard. Some of them involve going through them several times, just so you can memorize a pattern that is necessary to progress, while others rely on moving as quickly as possible to get through it. There's at least one puzzle that combines the two, and I was going apeshit. I will say that at first they're incredibly frustrating, and you just want to say fuck it and move on. But once you do it, and you get to the reward, it's all worth it. So far I haven't encountered a reward for a puzzle that didn't match the difficulty. If it was an easy puzzle, the reward was something small, but still useful. If the puzzle was really hard, you got something really cool and helpful that made it feel like all that work was worth it in the end. The best part is, the puzzles aren't terribly repetitive. Every puzzle feels fresh and different and utilizes a different mechanic of the game. This is something that is generally hard to do in any game that lasts more than a few hours, but they managed to do it. Though I have to admit, they did seem a little desperate for original ideas when they decided to put a rhythm puzzle in the game. I would have to say the downfall of this game for me is the monsters. They're mostly bland and generic with a few exceptions. I know that the game is inspired by Dungeons & Dragons, whose monsters have become incredibly standard fare, but they're all basically the same. They feel like reskins of each other, between the snail, the skeleton warrior, the herder, and even the crowern. The other enemies are just elemental swaps of each other, like the Agardian is your fire thrower, smaller herder is just a thrower, big herder is a poison thrower, and the skeleton archer is the ice thrower. Even the bigger enemies feel samey. The giant crab and the ogre are essentially the same thing. And snails? Really? All the enemies move in the same way as you do, one square at a time, and in the right situation, this can be heavily exploitable. But I don't count that against the game, since any edge you can get in a game this difficult is welcome. The last thing I want to talk about before I get into the review portion of this video is the fact that this game gives you the ability to lay out and play through custom dungeons. This game comes packaged with a dungeon editor. You just open it up, start a new project, click generate until you find a name you like, and go nuts. It's very easy to use and intuitive right out of the gate, so you can do basically everything the game already does. You can even add custom scripts to basically every object, making it do whatever you want. Now, I never got too deep into that, but the idea that you can is pretty goddamn cool. As you're designing your level, you can also playtest it. There are little debug features that allow you to heal your players, and other stuff that makes it easier for you to make test runs. Once you're satisfied with your work, you can export it, then go back to the main menu and play the custom level you just created. This game is really good, and really hard. The things it does well, it does very well. I mean, I would say this game beats Portal. Not Portal 2. I mean, it's somewhere in the middle. The only problem is, the things this game does bad, it does really bad. Like I said before, the controls are awkward, and the spell system leaves much to be desired. When you dial in a spell, then attempt to click the button to cast it, you may accidentally click another rune and fizzle out your spell, effectively making your mage useless for a few more seconds, with some precious energy wasted. Also, it just feels like a tedious process to remember those spells and dial them in during the heat of battle. I know it adds to the difficulty, but it's a smidge too much, and I find myself just using the basic spells like Fire Burst and Shock, just to make sure I'm able to get the spell off with little trouble. There's a lack of music during gameplay, which is replaced completely by ambience. I have no problem with this at all, as you wouldn't expect to hear music in a mountainous dungeon. You hear ambience from your surroundings, and having no music helps with the sound effects. The sound effects are implemented in such a way that you can hear the relative location of an enemy nearby. I played most of this game with shitty laptop speakers. There near the end I actually had to play with headphones, and I have a pretty good set of headphones, so whenever I used them, the sound effects in this game just seemed more grandiose. I was finally hearing what they were actually meant to sound like, and this brought me into the game a little more and made it more interesting for me. So I would suggest doing that. And oh my god, the difficulty. Did I mention that this game was hard? Well, it deserves mentioning again. It's not bullshit hard like with quick time events and button mashing. it actually offers real challenge. The challenges in this game are hard, the first time you encounter them anyway. There's always a strategy to take out enemies and get through puzzles. Usually, when you first stumble into a puzzle or intense battle situation, you fail or die and think, well, that was fucked up, this is bullshit! But once you know it's coming and you kind of prepare yourself for it as you survey your surroundings for ways to beat the scenario, it becomes clear that yes, this incredibly difficult thing was placed in your way, but it was also planned that you have other methods of dealing with the situation. There's still some parts that are pretty dick, but really there's only one piece of advice that I can give you. Save up your bombs. Seriously, best thing you can do, save them. They got me out of a lot of scrapes, and I'm pretty sure that's what they're in the game for. Now, as much as I praise this game, there's always one part in every game that doesn't seem to fit. And unfortunately for this game, it's the end boss. I mean, he's just kind of dumb and cheap. It's a mechanical cube called the Undying One that just kind of rolls around the level. You find the weapon of power that you have to hit it with so it stops moving, then take the parts you had put into it previously, and after you take all 4 parts, it's susceptible to regular damage. What really gets on my nerves, though, is that if it rolls over you, it crushes you, and it's a one-hit death, so melee attacks are right the hell out. That wouldn't be so terribly bad if the most annoying enemies in the game weren't surrounding you during this fight. There are tons of Shractor, Scavengers, Guardians, and Ice Lizards, and fighting a group of them off, then getting crushed by the Undying, isn't entirely ideal. The end boss was just really annoying, and it made no sense that the weapon of power would no longer stun him after you remove the 4 parts that you installed. And that he was also able to function without those 4 parts as well, when he was completely disabled without them before. I found it more tense to fight the Wardens that were preventing you from resurrecting the Undying One, even though the same 4-square tango technique worked on them as everyone else. Hell, when I beat the Undying, it was only because I found a nice quiet corner after taking all his parts, and just wailed away at him while avoiding his crushing roll. You knew that the big twist at the end would be that the visions were from the main villain, and you were in fact helping him. We've seen this before. But really, what else were you going to do? You were trapped as it was. What did the Undying One have to gain? How would he escape? What's really the goddamn point? I suppose the point was that I did care about what I was doing up until this point, and I had played this game for roughly 30 hours to get here. So, fuck it. Might as well finish it. But 4 pieces? Honestly, they removed 4 pieces from the thing that nearly destroyed everything. 4 pieces, called it a day. World saved. It's good. Fine. Whatever. Yeah. I mean, from a gameplay standpoint, yeah. You don't want to be doing this quest to reassemble it and then later disassemble it for ages. But they took off 4 fucking pieces and called it a day. I'll give it this, though. The flavor text for the 4 items you have to find to reassemble the Undying One do that weird character flip thing, like the messages and the visions do, implying that he's been in your head the whole time. It's only stronger when you're only in the lower levels with him. So after watching the Undying One die, you're favored with watching him explode as he creates an exit through the mountain wall that your characters escape through, presumably before the mountain explodes, leaving a large crater behind. That's it. Nothing else. You don't know if they survive or, you know, the Undying One's actually dead. You just kind of guess all this. That's Legend of Grimrock. That's it. I mean, it's a pretty good game up until the end, but even then, take it for what it is. It's an indie game, and you can't really expect anything too grandiose, but you did have a good time getting there. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go play some Swords and Serpents.